week on Africa Weekly, we travel to Paris, where members of France's Congolese community who have declared their opposition to the Brazzaville regime are living in fear of reprisals. And we take you to Senegal, where young entrepreneurs teeming with ideas may finally be getting interest from investors. But first, a summary of the stories that made the headlines this week. Congolese gynecologist Denis Mukwege, who has spent more than 2 decades treating appalling injuries inflicted on women in DRC, was announced as the 2018 Nobel Peace Prize winner on Friday. A father to 5 children, the tireless 63-year-old is an outspoken critic of the abuse of women in war, who has repeatedly accused the world of failing to act. A suicide bomber rammed a vehicle loaded with explosives into a European Union military convoy on Monday, injuring 2 civilians. In a statement on a pro-Shabaab website, Al-Shabaab Islamists claimed responsibility for the attack against the so-called European Union Christians. US First Lady Melania Trump kicked off her first major solo trip in Ghana's capital Accra on Tuesday, aiming to cast a positive light on her embattled husband's administration. Trump met with the Ghanaian First Lady, Rebecca Akufo-Addo, after a short visit to a hospital in the city. Her trip sees her visiting Malawi, Kenya and Egypt before returning to Washington. Unlike her predecessors, her visit is being followed closely to see if she can build bridges after the president reportedly dismissed Africa as a collection of shithole countries. Cameroonian President Paul Biya, a candidate for re-election next week, called for peace and dialogue to end violence in the country's English-speaking regions at a meeting in Maroua on Saturday in the far north of the country.
Il nous reste évidemment à restaurer la paix dans nos régions du nord-ouest.
We obviously still have to restore peace in the northwest and southwest regions, which have been bruised by the abuses of the secessionists, by giving both regions all the satisfaction they are entitled to expect, by protecting them against the excesses of their so-called liberators.
Contre les excès de ces soi-disant libérateurs.
On Sunday, Maurice Kamto, leader of the opposition party Movement for the Rebirth of Cameroon, held a campaign rally in Yaoundé ahead of the October 7 presidential poll.
We're assuring peace in this country. We will guarantee peace in this country, because we will gather the Cameroonians. I have told you, as soon as you elect me as the head of this country, my first visit will be to the northeast and the southeast to solve this problem.
Official campaigning ahead of the vote began last week. 9 candidates will be competing for the presidency, which Biya has held with an iron grip since 1982. A team of paleontologists announced on Friday the discovery of a new species of giant dinosaurs that ruled 200 million years ago in what is now South Africa. Twice the size of an elephant, these herbivores were at the time the largest animals living on Earth. According to researchers at the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, these colossi could well be the distant ancestors of the 60-ton giant sauropods popularized in Steven Spielberg's famous Jurassic Park series.
Critics of the Congo regime in France have been beaten up, a bounty placed on the head of a former general, and retired secret agents with murky roles lurk behind the scenes. In the latest chapter of an affair that reads like a spy novel, an assassination attempt against Ferdinand Mabbou, instigated by former French intelligence agents. Now a refugee in France, the general's become an outspoken opponent of Congolese President Denis Sassou Nguesso since his return to power in 1997. It's not the first time the outspoken general survived an attempt on his life. He still has a bullet in his back to remind him of his narrow escape in 2015. No one was charged in connection.
I was lucky, but not everyone has been as lucky as me. We are afraid, and yes, we do feel threatened everywhere, even here in France.
Another opponent was beaten up in May 2017 while on his way to a demonstration against the president's visit to Paris. He was attacked by a regime supporter encouraged by members of the Presidential Guard who filmed the scene and posted it on the internet.
This is the complaint I filed against Mr. Sassou Nguesso's security guard.
Roland attracted attention for criticising online the French luxury property portfolio of President Sassou and his entourage, such as this villa in Nice. Explosive revelations for the government in a country where half the population lives below the poverty line. He believes that France hasn't done enough to protect its Congolese community.
We cannot accept that Sassou Nguesso brings violence back here to France. It's unacceptable that I get attacked in broad daylight in the middle of Paris. His security guards were arrested, but until now the case hasn't progressed at all. It shows that there's a problem.
These unresolved matters are no surprise to Africa specialist Antoine Glaser, who believes Paris wouldn't want to antagonise its historical ally.
He probably knows all of France's issues in Africa over a long period of time, particularly the Cold War. He has rendered an enormous amount of service to France. On the economic and oil front, he helped ELF and then Total to gain positions in Angola.
Fearing for their safety, members of the Franco-Congolese community are cautious. Raphael Goma, who runs an organisation for critics of the regime, hasn't set foot in Brazzaville since 2005 and never travels alone after he claims a car tried to run him down. He accuses French authorities of being complacent towards certain African leaders.
France-Afrique is not finished as long as France has stakes in Africa, especially oil, uranium and who knows what else. France will always continue to manipulate these leaders because they favor people who serve French interests.
When asked about these allegations, Congolese authorities denied any involvement.
These young Senegalese entrepreneurs have 3 minutes to deliver their pitch. They're taking part in a global competition to win funding to develop their startup ideas. Olivia Ndiaye's business got going less than 2 years ago.
We quickly got all the right people in place, quickly found an incubator to help us to structure the project. But unfortunately, it's more the financial side, the investors, funding, especially in the early stages. That's where you find difficulties.
The relative novelty of tech startups adds to the cautious attitude of investors in a country where financial resources are limited. Swiss investment fund SeedStars has a presence in 80 developing countries, including Senegal and other parts of sub-Saharan Africa.
What's lacking is investment in smaller scale projects for startups that need between around $10,000 to $50,000. The private investor scene doesn't really exist today, or at least it needs a lot of development. That's one of the main things that SeedStars will do, by looking for early stage startups that often have a great need for funding today.
Yet things are getting going at a local level as well. CTIC, a business incubator started in Dakar in 2011, recently organised a regional investors summit. And the Senegalese state has also taken measures to boost entrepreneurship.
For some years now, Senegal has lowered the minimum social capital necessary to start a business from 1 million CFA francs to 100,000 CFA francs. You can have a social capital of 100,000 CFA francs. I think that really facilitates the creation of limited liability companies and their single owner equivalents.
Authorities are also planning to open a digital technology park in 2021 to further galvanise this sector. With these changes to Senegal's business environment, other young investors like Olivia may soon be able to get their business ideas up and running.
Several hundred participants fought the sea currents between Dakar and Gorée Island in the 31st annual swimming race on Sunday, an event organised by Senegal's Swimming Federation. Also on Sunday, hundreds of riders suited up for a motorcycle parade through Johannesburg to raise awareness of men's health issues. Launched in 2012 with around 30 riders, the event now sees more than 1,000 participants, dressed dapper, taking part. That's all from us at Africa Weekly. Until next week.